broadcast with this, but we could as well put it out there. And the reason why I thought about it is because everybody who is a member of the I Love Jeet Kune group, everybody who is not a member but interacts with the JKD group, it's because of Jeet Kune. It's because of Bruce Lee.
Yeah.
So here's this jackass, Steven Crowder, doing his debunking whatever. So I thought, all right, if Carlos doesn't mind, I'll spend some time on the I Love JKD broadcast going a little bit more in depth with Steven Crowder. So I'm going to tell you this from the outset, okay? When I call him a jackass, I am calling him a jackass specifically in reference to what he has been saying about Bruce Lee. That's all I know about him. That's the only aspect in which I am particularly concerned.
It's all we care about.
So let's just get that part. It's like if I would be a jackass if I started doing political commentary. I don't know enough about it.
Yeah.
Right? But I wouldn't go out there and do political commentary on somebody and reveal that I don't know a friggin' thing about them, right? So some of this stuff I have to read. One of the things that I told you was that he was on Andrew Clavin's show over at a thing called the Daily Wire, right? So I want you to hear, and hopefully the cameras can pick this up. I want you to hear how this came about. So this is Andrew Clavin and Steven Crowder. Listen to this.
Because you went with the Ed Furlong American History X narrative. So it's about your
I have to ask you, before I let you go, I have to ask you the all-important question. You are a mixed martial artist, by which I mean that you can actually, I think, in 2 out of 3 falls, you can probably beat your wife in a fight. And what did you think?
Okay, stop there.
That's
See?
weird.
Yeah, so listen to this, right? So Andrew Clavin says, you are a mixed... I mean, obviously they're poking fun at each other. These guys know each other. They both work in the political commentary circle. Right? So yeah, so of course there's that. But you see what Clavin's saying? You are a mixed martial artist. This is what I was telling you yesterday. Civilians consider martial artists to be these somehow wacky people that do this thing about which they have no understanding and nothing. In the old days, it would be karate. Today, because MMA is the thing that is mega popularized on TV, the public has now adopted that word, that phrase, mixed martial arts, into their vernacular.
Right.
So he'll say that. Decades ago, he would have said, "You are a karate guy." That's what he would have said.
Yeah.
Today he'll say, "You're a mixed martial artist."
That's just generalizing.
Right? Yeah, you see?
And when you say civilians, you mean non-martial artists, non-JKD guys? What do you mean by that?
Yeah, right. Yeah, because there's 2 types of civilians. There's the civilians who are non-martial artists, and then there's the civilians who are non-JKD martial artists.
Okay. So which one are you guys? Or are you one?
Right? Okay, so listen to this.
Mayweather Magruder match.
Right? Did you hear that?
It went about exactly as
Did
I
you hear that?
expected.
He said, Clavin's asking Crowder, so what are your thoughts on the Mayweather-Magruder match? So that just illustrates even further how far removed Andrew Clavin is from this, which is why I think it was a setup.
Yeah.
It was a setup so that Crowder gets to talk what you're going to hear him say, right? So I think they did it beforehand.
Tonight we're having a Sacred Cow cookout. We'll debunk Bruce Lee. We're going to get more hate for this than Bruce Lee. It's a total farce. The guy never fought a day in his life. He was 10 pounds lighter and 2 inches shorter than Not Gay Jared. Was lucky to squat. Was weak as a kitten. Couldn't fight. Didn't know anything about martial arts and was a compulsive liar. And this new film came out, right? You know, with him and Wong Jack Man. And like, 20-minute battle. It was 3 minutes.
Okay, so I wrote something down, so let me make sure I got this, right? So he's using the question from Crowder as a lead-in to announce on his show that he's going to be debunking Bruce Lee and revealing that Bruce Lee was, and I think this is the direct quote, a total farce, never fought a day in his life, was weak as a kitten, didn't know anything about martial arts and was a compulsive liar. Let me say this again. A total farce. Bruce Lee, a total farce. Never fought a day in his life, was weak as a kitten, didn't know anything about martial arts, and was a compulsive liar. Now, here's the deal. Comedy is comedy.
Right.
Jokes are jokes, right? You know, and he's somewhat of a comedian. But at this point, he's not telling jokes.
Yeah.
See? He's promoting what he's going to be talking about on his show.
Yeah.
So he's not trying to tell jokes, because when you tell jokes as a comedian, you know that what you're saying isn't necessarily true, but you're doing it for comedic effect.
Right.
I don't think
He
this
thinks
is the
it's-
point.
Yeah.
This is his thing.
This is what he thinks.
Right? So that's what a lot of people haven't seen, because this might not be up on
Right.
the YouTube. But I have the
We got the footage.
I got the footage of what he said on the Craven show.
That's crazy.
Right? So yeah, okay, total farce, weak as a kid.
And the one who said that, just who that's Steven Crowder?
That's Steven Crowder,
That's nuts.
right? But isn't this incredible? Didn't know anything about martial arts.
I don't know where he gets that.
In what universe can Steven Crowder exist?
He must have not done jujitsu.
Who? Bruce Lee?
But
Oh, well, yeah, right? See, because, so since Bruce Lee never trained in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, right, he can't possibly be a real martial artist. He can't possibly know anything about martial arts. That's where this is coming from, in my opinion.
Yeah.
That's where it's coming from.
Yeah.
Right? Well, okay, so let's go on.
Well,
right?
what's interesting about it, the fact that he can get this kind of attention also, it just shows the influence and the power of Bruce Lee. I mean, shoot, he passed away years ago, decades ago, and now he's still being used as a tool to, by these guys at least, kind of get their marketing or whatever they're doing across. I don't know, but that's just kind of shows the influence Bruce Lee had. It wasn't just, hey, do Jeet Kune Do. It was, as a martial art generation, I mean, every martial artist knows Bruce Lee.
I really
influenced everybody.
I really don't know, and this is the thing. See, this is the thing. You go almost anywhere in the world, right? And you ask people, "What do you think about Bruce Lee?" Right? Do you know who Bruce Lee is?
Yeah.
Right? It's like my two. We've talked about this before. My two role models, Bruce Lee and Bob Marley. Right? What they have in common? They're known all over the world. Everybody likes them.
Yeah.
Right? How often do you hear somebody go, "Oh no, I hate Bob Marley music"? What?
Yeah.
It
Yeah,
probably doesn't happen.
It
Right?
probably doesn't.
Okay. Right. So, but yeah, Bruce Lee has always had his detractors, and a lot of it is this thing about, oh, he was never a fighter because he never competed. Okay. Right. Well, you know, we talked about that yesterday, but if we get to it again, we'll get to it.
Yeah.
So now, right? I'm not
Pound the likes, guys. Share this video out. Make sure you're sharing this video out, please. Let us know where you're from, what you think of this. Do you think Bruce Lee was a fraud? I don't think so.
Yeah. Right. So I don't have it queued up and what have you. So we'll
Amongst
just
them, being a great fighter,
we'll just see what he
or
says.
being one of the strongest people pound for pound, or being one of the most prolific martial none of it. None of that is true. And this is the thing, what really bothers me was when I was a kid and we went to my first martial arts classes, they made us bow to Bruce Lee. Like, oh, yeah, this folk yeah, they did. They made us bow to Bruce Lee. And I know it's just probably a crappy dojo. But here's the thing.
Now, I'm going to tell you something about people like this, right? Because in certain instances, I am one of them. You see that rapid fire commentary, right? That's where your brain's clicking over and what have you. When you analyze what they're saying, you can actually get to like the psychological depth of why they're saying what they're saying. You see what he said there about when he was a kid, they made him bow to Bruce Lee? Now, first of all, that to me sounds like a karate school.
Right.
Because we
was
don't
just
bow,
thinking that.
right?
Yeah.
We don't bow to Bruce Lee
Right.
because we don't use a traditional Korean or Japanese type bow,
Exactly.
right? We pay respects. A lot of times, in when I had the big school, we would pay the salutation we would do towards Bruce Lee's picture, right? Which is something I got from Dan and Asano because they did it at the Kali Academy, right? So yeah, it's something that you do, but nobody bows
Right.
to Bruce Lee or what have you. I think psychologically, because he'll say it later on, right? Maybe we'll play the clip, maybe we won't, but he'll say it later on. He says in grade school, he got his butt kicked using the techniques that he learned at that school.
It sounds like he's jealous of Bruce Lee.
No. I wouldn't agree with you that he's jealous. I think that deep down psychologically, right, he still resents the fact that he got his butt kicked as a kid. And because he was training in a school in which the martial art techniques were ineffective, he blames that.
Yep.
Right?
That's true.
And since there was this Bruce Lee connection to it, because whoever was the instructor at school had the kids bowing to Bruce Lee, somehow he's mixing those two, and Bruce Lee becomes the butt of his jokes. Right, because he's still pissed off at having been beat up, right? Anyhow, right? So that's my armchair psychology behind what he says, right? So here's what he says. In honor of the latest film to come out. So what is he saying here? That he's honoring a movie that's not even real?
Right.
A movie where they're taking a real life event and they have written this whole fictional story about it. He's honoring, in honor of this movie that just came out. So that sounds almost as if he's taken this Birth of a Dragon movie to be his source material.
Right.
Well, that's jackassery.
Yes.
Okay? It really is, right?
Yeah.
So here's another thing he says. He makes a cursory acknowledgement that Bruce Lee did make some valuable contributions to the martial art world. Well, of course he's going to do that, because he knows that there are going to be martial artists like us watching this, so he doesn't want to come off as a total jerk.
Yeah.
But see, here's the thing. If you wanted to actually be respectful to Bruce Lee, after saying that he made some contributions, you could detail them.
Yes.
And you could just leave it there instead of trying to poke fun at him, at his image, at his contribution, right, to the martial art world and beyond.
Right.
Because there are people outside of martial art. There are people in sports influenced by Bruce Lee.
Oh, yeah.
Sugar Ray Leonard in boxing, for example, right? Manny Pacquiao, for example. Let me see who I can remember. I mean, look, I'll put it to you this way. In business, everybody reads Think and Grow Rich.
Yes.
Everybody reads Think and Grow Rich and credits Napoleon Hill's book with giving them their entrepreneurial mindset.
Right.
Think and Grow Rich, born out of 17 Principles of Human Achievement, principle number 114 or whatever it is, definite chief aim.
Yeah.
Do a Google search. Why not highlight something like that?
Yeah. Bruce Lee had
Right?
a definite chief aim.
Why not? This is where I'm going with that. You do a Google search for definite chief aim, Bruce Lee's at the top.
Yeah.
Because the most famous rendition of any definite chief aim is Bruce Lee's. So now you've got a guy who, as far as we know, was not into business,
Right, of course.
but is using the same self-development tools that all the business people are using.
Yeah.
And that's not worthy of commentary? Instead, you're going to call Bruce Lee a total farce who knew nothing about martial art, right?
That's
and was
silly.
a compulsive liar.
That's silly.
What the hell would Steven Crowder know that Bruce Lee lied about?
Yeah.
What, I mean, like which JKD people does he hang out with? Anyway,
Which one?
right?
Okay.
Okay.
Well, I mean, the fact that Bruce Lee was able to go and take stuff from Napoleon Hill's business book just shows this whole absorb what is useful. He actually applied his own philosophy. He took stuff from the business world, he took stuff from philosophy, from martial art, combined it, and I mean, he literally extracted all the things that kind of made him better.
Yeah.
You know,
it's like
he applied what he taught rather than just say do this and I'm still gonna not do it. It's like the Out of Shape fitness coach.
Yeah, I don't know if if Think and Grow Rich was written as a business book or as a self-development book.
Right.
In either case, that's what it has evolved into being. Both sets of people use that book as a reference material for that. Somehow, in the 1940s, 50s, and 60s, Bruce Lee was into that. So it could be he was into the business side of it, perhaps not, but definitely into the self-development side of it.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Okay. And then we have Steven Crowder. Right? So
Guys, pound the likes, share the video out.
So what was the next one? Then he says, pound for pound, yeah, pound, right?
Pound.
He wasn't
Pounded.
one. He wasn't one of the strongest people in the world. Okay, so when I'd like him to tell me where he came across Bruce Lee on camera, right, or on audio saying, "Hey, you know, pound for pound, I'm one of the strongest people in the world." Nonsense.
Yeah.
My belief is that that came about August of 1998. I think is when John Little's book, The Art of Expressing the Human Body, was released.
That's the first book I read of Bruce Lee.
Right? Okay.
About Bruce Lee.
Then several years later, Bruce Lee appears, I counted the copies that I have, 6 times on the cover of Muscle and Fitness.
Wow.
Okay? So, and I think that started perhaps, let's say it started, I know the covers, I don't know the dates, but one of them is like 2012. So let's say that the first time he appeared was 2006.
Right.
So now he's been dead.
But he's still appearing.
Now he's been dead for 33 years. Okay? So 33 years after Bruce Lee passed away, an editor commissions a writer at Muscle and Fitness to do a cover story on him, and maybe they're using the art of expressing the human body as source material. Right? And Crowder makes fun that Bruce Lee squatted 95 pounds. Right? So at what point was Bruce Lee training to bulk up?
Right, exactly.
Like Bolo in Enter the Dragon, right? Now, if you read about Bruce Lee, you'd find out that Bruce Lee's intention was never
To bulk.
to get that big.
Exactly.
Okay, Bruce Lee wanted to stay small. Crowder always talks about him being 120 pounds or 110 pounds and whatever. And he talks about Bruce Lee being the same size as his sidekick, Not Gay Jarrett. If you take a look at Not Gay Jarrett, I mean, bless his heart, right? The guy has some kind of physical affliction, so I think that's why he's so skinny or what have you. But to compare Not Gay Jarrett's physique with Not Gay Jarrett, he could pay Muscle and Fitness, he'd have to pay him $1 million, right? And agree to be made fun of in order to put a story in Muscle and Fitness to appear about him.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
That's like the only way.
That's the only way.
So for a so-called intelligent person like Steven Crowder to kind of make, maybe it's just jokes.
Well, you know,
Maybe
some
it's
people
just
don't-
jokes.
They're all,
Right?
yeah. I hear you.
I don't know. Maybe it's just jokes.
Sometimes people don't follow through on their thinking.
Right. Then the other one is something about being the most prolific martial artist in the world. Well, I don't know exactly what it is he means by prolific. Is he talking about whether or not Bruce Lee wrote the most books? No. Made the most movies? No. When did Bruce Lee ever say, I'm one of the most prolific martial artists in the world?
Yeah.
Never.
Yeah.
Never.
Yeah.
Right? So what is he talking about? Where does he get this idea? I don't know what his source material is for that particular myth. So then he, that's where he makes fun, and then he goes on to say, okay, so myth number 1 is that Bruce Lee was the first to mix the arts and therefore the father of MMA. And that's when he engages in the same like false humility, right? Because he talks about that Bruce Lee was forward thinking and he did discuss principles of mixing the arts. But listen to this. Then he makes the ridiculous claim that Bruce Lee merely talked about that stuff but never trained that way. He hardly grappled. Again, taking it back to Bruce Lee wasn't doing no BJJ, so therefore he could never really have been training, right? He could never really have been cross-training. Oh, I don't know, right? I don't know. I think Bruce Lee actually is one of the original cross-trainers in the modern era. Right? Maybe, yes, it wasn't extensively ground fighting BJJ style.
Yeah.
So, but because it wasn't that, he's a farce, and he doesn't know anything about martial arts, and he's a compulsive liar.
That's insane.
All right?
That's insane. Guys, what do you think about this? Comment below. Let us know where you're from. Let us know your opinion. Make sure you're liking, pounding the hearts, pounding the hearts.
And then, of course, he fails to point out what everybody knows. The person responsible for the phrase Bruce Lee is the father of mixed martial arts is Dana White.
Yeah.
Why doesn't he acknowledge that, which everybody knows? See, that's how you show yourself to be an idiot.
Yeah.
Because everybody knows that Dana White said that.
Exactly.
So he doesn't say, and then Dana White, of course, said this, and then ascribe the blame for the myth to Dana White. He keeps doing it in a way that blames Bruce Lee.
Yeah. When Dana was actually smart, he aligned himself with Bruce Lee because he knew Bruce Lee was like the icon and is the icon of martial art. Everybody knows who Bruce Lee is, like we've been talking about.
Right, and the truth is, look, of course, business-wise, it was very smart, right? But then the reality of it is what? Look at the fight scene, less than 30 seconds into the beginning of Enter the Dragon, and it's what? Bareback, Speedos, finger gloves, kick, punch, trap, grapple, and victory through submission.
Exactly.
This is 1972. This is 41 years before Royce Gracie and UFC 1 and Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu blows up all across the world. He can't find it in his heart to give Bruce Lee credit for that.
That's insane.
You can't bring up something like that. Steven Crowder is not smart enough to bring up something like that. The best he can do is to call Bruce Lee a compulsive liar, knew nothing about martial arts. So here's a guy who knew nothing about martial arts, was just a popular actor. Because he says that.
That's insane.
He says that. He was just a popular actor. Yet, I mean, look,
Yeah.
am I lying?
No, that's
You
what
heard
he's
it,
saying.
right?
Yeah.
Knew nothing about martial arts. So a guy who is just a popular actor and knows nothing about martial arts is able to light the world on fire with his martial art choreography in Enter the Dragon, right? Look, Crowder is such an, he's such a, I'll use nice language, right?
We can't find that
He
language.
He doesn't even talk about, what do you call it?
If Bruce was alive, the UFC would have Bruce and... That's funny.
Would have what?
It cut out for a second.
okay.
I didn't get the full
Right.
question.
Yeah. Right. So, how about this? Do you think that when Fist of Fury opened up, and they had to shut it down and spend a week rearranging Hong Kong traffic patterns and then reopen the movie? I ain't never heard that happen for Tom Cruise or Brad Pitt or Arnold Schwarzenegger or what's the guy from Gladiator? Russell Crowe, right? Never heard that happen, right? Traffic jams because of a movie, right? But no. Do you think that that's just because Bruce Lee was a popular actor and knew nothing about martial arts? So the people who flocked to his movies, even in the early days, they did that just because he was a popular actor. They didn't do that because his martial arts in the movie, they were like, wow, this is good stuff.
Yeah.
What kind of person in 2017, August, September, says that Bruce Lee knew nothing about martial arts?
It doesn't even make sense.
Because you trained in wrestling and jiu-jitsu somewhere, you qualified to say that? I don't know. So then he shows a book on pancreation to illustrate that Bruce Lee was not the first to mix the arts. Yeah, we know that. Bruce Lee never said, hello world, I'm the first to mix the arts. And then I'll bet you this. With a personal library of over 2,000 books, I bet you if that book is an older book, because I didn't look up when it was published, I bet you if it's an older book, Bruce Lee probably had it.
Yeah.
Right?
Exactly.
He probably had it.
Exactly.
Then, dig this. He tries to infer that Tony Danza, you know Tony Danza? Here's what he says. He says Tony Danza trained in boxing and wrestling. So he cross-trained more than Bruce Lee. So I think what he's trying to say here is that Tony Danza, who is an actor, is a better example of a cross-training martial artist
Than Bruce
than Bruce Lee, because Tony Danza trained in boxing and wrestling.
Yeah. That's silly.
What?
Yeah.
What?
Silly.
Well, we know Bruce Lee trained in Wing Chun.
Mm-hmm.
We know he trained Choi Foot. We know that he trained judo up in Seattle a little bit. We know he spent some time, I mean, not extensive time, but some time with Jean LaBelle, right? We know that his boxing training, he probably developed that on his own. The fencing, there is, I don't know for sure, but I know for sure his brother Peter was a fencer, so that might have been where his ideas on fencing came from. But then he had an extensive library.
Yeah. You always kept
So
learning.
he was self-educated,
Yeah.
right? And self-teaching to a certain extent. Okay, so but Tony Danza is a better example, right? You know what I'd love to do is to ask Tony Danza, hey, there's a guy on the YouTube that's saying that you are a better example of a cross-training martial artist than Bruce Lee. What do you think Tony Danza would think of that?
Oh, no,
you think Tony Danza would be like, oh yes, I think that guy Steven Crowder, he's brilliant. He's got to be really smart. He's probably the smartest martial artist there's ever been. You think Tony Danza would come up with that?
I highly doubt it.
I don't know. Anyhow, right? So,
Guys, hit the like button, make sure you're sharing this out, pushing the stream out. We want to get as many people on here as possible. Make sure you're sharing it out. Comment where you're from. Let us know where you're listening in from.
all right, so then he goes to myth number 2, that about Bruce Lee being the greatest fighter of all time.
Yeah.
Right, so we talked about, I don't know, I'm pretty sure it wasn't Bruce Lee who started that rumor,
Yeah.
right? And even though Crowder isn't making that exact claim, that Bruce Lee said this about himself, he still makes it seem like Bruce Lee is a liar, because he doesn't strongly emphasize that this myth had to have come about after Bruce Lee's death. You see, he doesn't stress that point.
Yeah.
So by being comedic towards it, he knows what he's doing.
Right.
He knows he's making Bruce Lee look bad. Right? Yeah. Now, I'm not so much of a Bruce Lee fan or fanatic that I dare you to make Bruce Lee look bad in any case. Dramatic actor, Bruce Lee?
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
not really. He's no, I don't know, Cary Grant or...
Right.
He's not okay? So there are certain things in which Bruce Lee, would look bad. Okay? But as a martial artist?
No, I don't think about that. I don't think so.
Right? So then he gets to the famous video and here's what he says, a video that surfaced in 2017, right? Well, look, I saw that video in 1983, back when there was a thing called VHS. Right?
What is that thing?
Yeah, exactly. Right?
Comment if you know what a VHS is.
And VHS is a thing that was played on a VCR. So comment if you know what VCR means, right? Now the truth is that the video here's what happened. And I love the guy. I think he's called Beardy Central. I love what he did. He restored the footage. It got colorized. There's one error, to the best of my knowledge, that occurs. They think that it's a demonstration between Bruce Lee and Ted Wong. I'm pretty sure it's not Ted Wong, it's Dan Inosanto.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure.
I think you're right.
I am pretty sure.
Yeah.
Because this is 1966, and I don't think Ted Wong was training at that time.
Gotcha.
You see?
Yeah.
So, but Inosanto definitely, because they had met 2 years previously in '64. So I'm pretty sure it was Inosanto and Taki Kimura.
Is Inosanto
who were
the
two
oldest student, or was he the one who had started with Bruce Lee first, like before all these other guys? I know there's you know what I mean?
Okay, so chronologically.
Right, yes.
Chronologically,
Trying to ask a question, guys.
Okay, this is and this is where if you haven't put in the time reading and maybe even studying about Bruce Lee and Jeet Kune, this is where people's lines get crossed. So you could say that the most senior person in the Seattle group is Taki Kimura. You could say that. But that would mean only that Taki Kimura is most senior because he was put in charge. But it doesn't mean that chronologically he's the most senior. Because apparently, Jesse Glover was the first person that Bruce Lee took on as a student. Wow. So chronologically, Jesse Glover would be the senior.
Right.
You get what I'm saying? Right. But in terms of who was put in charge, for whatever reason, it was Taki Kimura. Then James Lee would be the second guy, so to speak, because he was put in charge in Oakland. So then that makes Inosanto number 3 because he was in charge in Los Angeles. And that's one way of looking at the eras, the different eras in Bruce Lee's development. Right? So, so it's like Seattle is sometimes considered to be the modified Wing Chun era. Oakland is considered to be the Jun Fan Kung Fu era. Yeah. You see, and then Los Angeles is the Jeet Kune Do era because the term Jeet Kune Do was coined when he lived in Los Angeles. It wasn't coined in Seattle. It wasn't coined in Oakland. So there's that breakdown. Yeah. Right. Does that answer your question?
That definitely answers it. Yeah.
Actually, that something
was that in there?
A little thing comes up about that because what happened on the YouTube is that the clip was titled something like footage of Bruce Lee's only real fight. And since we are having this discussion with Crowder over whether Bruce Lee was a real fighter or not, you put something like that on the YouTube, it will blow up. Of course. Everybody's going to click on it. This, what do you all call it? Clickbait?
Clickbait.
That's what that is, right? So it worked out perfectly.
Actually, Emmanuel Miguel Ruiz has a question. Is Crowder even a martial artist, Sifu?
Who asked that?
Emmanuel Miguel Ruiz.
Hey, thanks for the question, Manuel.
To the best of my understanding, he has done wrestling. He talks about doing the... actually, on the Clavin show, he says something about having glass knees, so he's probably not currently training. But then on his own show, he talked about he talked with Ben Shapiro once and was making fun of Shapiro for looking at Krav Maga, right? Whereas Crowder was looking at jiu-jitsu. Right, and then when he makes the thing about on the Clavin show, when he makes the thing, he says the thing about how he could strangle Floyd Mayweather. He's talking about rear naked choke. Right, I mean, it's just like signature BJJ stuff. Yeah. So he definitely appears to be one of those who's like, if it's not BJJ because BJJ or MMA fighters, they rule the world, then your martial art is not worthwhile.
Silly.
Real martial artists don't get. I mean, look, we get our what's the saying? Panties in a bunch. Yeah. Right. We get ours over Jeet Kune Do because that's our thing. Right. When do we ever go? But you see those guys over there, right? In whatever, waste of time. Yeah. No, not even Brazilian. How could any rational human being, rational martial artist, sit and go, oh, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is a waste of time? Right? What's the big detraction against jiu-jitsu? Well, being on the ground is not always the place that you want to be. Right. That's a valid consideration. Yeah. A valid
especially
observation.
on the street where there's rocks and cement.
Right. Yeah.
Not a nice mat.
Not right. So that's the thing. Yeah. But for anybody to say that because of that, that makes the whole art of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu useless.
That's not true.
That's ridiculous. That's so ridiculous, right? Okay, so
that's just like non-rational thinking.
Yeah,
that's
right.
That's just emotional.
So then Sifu Dan appears for a few seconds, and he's saying something about the ease with which Bruce Lee talked. To him was mind-boggling. And Crowder comes on saying, yeah, of course it's easy if the guy's not resisting or something. The clip that they show is from the 1964 demo with Bruce Lee and Taki Kimura doing chisao. So it has nothing to do, right, with fighting.
Right.
And Bruce Lee obviously is lecturing or speaking while he's doing the chisao.
Right, yeah.
So he inserts this little thing with Dan Inosanto saying that Bruce Lee's ability to him was mind-boggling in 1964 to make another crack, another, you know, wisecrack about Bruce Lee not being whatever and whatever.
Right.
Right?
No, that's insane.
Yeah. Then he brings up the point again that at the school where he trained, they made the students bow to Bruce Lee. Right? So I'm wondering, does that automatically imbue you with like invincibility because you're bowing to Bruce Lee? So I really think that it's a little bit of a psychological disorder. Like he still has this resentment, right, at getting his butt kicked after studying martial art at that place. And it makes sense because a lot of people, even if it's later on, when they saw how effective Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is against all the other arts, they were like, I gotta train Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Right. This is what will make me closer to invincible. Because look, whether we want to admit it or not, a lot of people in martial art, they're in martial art because of this whole invincibility thing. It's like, if I know how to kick butt, then
no one will kick my butt.
Nobody's going to be able to take advantage of me because I know this and I know that.
That generally happens because it happened before. That's why you started.
Yes,
many times.
You see, right? But then, what do real martial artists discover? Yes, you develop an ability to fight back, but all of a sudden, this thing about proving yourself as a fighter, it's not that big a deal anymore.
Yeah.
Right? So again, there's a certain psychology that drives people to get in the ring, compete, be able to win, and jump on the top of the fence and go like this.
Yeah.
Come on. Yeah. Anybody who has ever experienced that level of adulation, right? Look, we feel good if we put something on the YouTube and somebody gives us a positive comment.
Do that here, guys.
Right? You know, if people pound the likes, if people put the hearts or whatever it is that you do, we feel good.
Right.
Imagine then that multiplied 1,000 times because you just beat the smack out of a guy, submitted him with a rear naked choke, and then you get to jump on the top of the fence.
It's validation. That's all you're seeking.
And what's wrong with that?
Right.
If that's what drives a guy, that's what drives a guy. Yeah. But imagine that guy get up on the fence, go like this, the crowd roars, and then he goes, you know, Bruce Lee was a total farce. You know, Bruce Lee didn't know anything about martial arts, and he was a compulsive liar. Why?
Yeah. No need
right?
for that.
Right, okay. So, what's the other thing he says? So then here's another one of his jokes, right? He says, you know, I got my butt handed to me while a student at that school that made me bow to Bruce Lee. So then he says in the Chinese voice, "Be water, my friend, and you'll get your ass kicked." As if it's Bruce Lee's fault that he got his ass kicked.
Exactly.
Because they made him bow to the image of Bruce Lee.
It all
he
comes
got his
back to
ass
that.
kicked.
Yeah.
So be water. So the person who's responsible for that ultra popular saying, "Be water, my friend," now Steven Crowder thinks he should add, "and you'll get your ass kicked."
Right. That's silly.
All right.
Yeah.
I mean, come on. Right.
Guys, comment. Let us know what you think. What do you think about this whole thing? I mean, are you on Steven's side, so to speak? What's your input on this? You know, smash the likes.
Kevin Thompson, is Jeet Kune Do mixed with Wing Chun?
It's a great question, Kevin. Sifu?
Well, again, as is the answer to a lot of things about Jeet Kune Do, yes and no.
Right.
No, it's not mixed with Wing Chun. Now, are there aspects of Wing Chun's training that Bruce Lee retained in his development of ideas as a martial artist, and for which those ideas, the name given to those ideas is Jeet Kune Do. So are there elements of Wing Chun? Did Wing Chun play a role in the development of Jeet Kune Do? Yes.
Yeah.
But this is where language is important. You see? Now, as a guy who writes words for a living, you understand the importance of that. So to say that Jeet Kune Do is mixed with Wing Chun is inaccurate. And unfortunately, this can sometimes be a drawback. Look at how long I took to answer that simple question, is Jeet Kune Do mixed with Wing Chun?
Right.
You could just say no, but that doesn't explain anything.
Right, exactly.
You could say yes, but that doesn't explain anything. But keep this in mind. What's a big factor in Jeet Kune Do? Truth.
Yeah.
Truth / accuracy or whatever. So I will take a little bit more time to explain why I'm giving the answer the way I'm giving it. And back it up whenever possible.
Yeah.
Unlike Steven Crowder, who makes his claims, right, and doesn't really back them up with anything.
Guys, if you know
right?
Steven Crowder personally, make sure you share this video to him, send it to his inbox, send it to his house, send it to his text messaging phone.
No. That's funny. That's funny. So then...
Is it tweeter or Twitter? Send it to his tweeter.
Yeah, right? So, yeah, of course, along the way, right, he takes the time, again, to insinuate that it's Bruce Lee's students who are spreading all these falsehoods so they can sell martial arts books or something, right? And he names Taki Kimura, right? Mispronounces his name. He names Jess Glover as opposed to Jesse Glover, right? So, to the best of my knowledge,
He's talking smack about them as well?
Yes, right? Now, what books did Taki Kimura try to sell? I don't know about any. What books did Jesse Glover try to sell? I don't know about two. I think Jesse actually did put a book out, but I don't ever remember Jesse Glover being on the circuit.
Right. Buy my book! Buy my book! No.
Come on.
That's silly.
Right? And then, so finally he comes to the consensus about the Wong Juk Man fight, which is what the whole movie is about.
Right.
That there are all these different stories as to what happened. He talks about a fight that is supposed to have happened in Seattle, and he says that Jesse Glover talks about Bruce Lee winning the fight with the Japanese guy, and saying that Kimura was there, but then in an interview, Taki says that he wasn't at the fight, that he just heard about it. And apparently, that's evidence that there's this huge conspiracy by Bruce Lee's students to portray Bruce Lee as the father of mixed martial arts, the pound for pound, the greatest, the one of the strongest people in the world, and the greatest fighter of all time.
That's
because Jesse Glover couldn't remember if Taki Kimura was at a fight or not.
Yeah.
That's evidence of some huge underground conspiracy, right? And then he kind of finishes up. He makes this joke.
Well, what do you know? What does the other side say? Not Bruce Lee's side. The guys he fought, like the guy you know what I mean? What did his school? What did his?
Well, I don't know. I don't know anything about what the Japanese guy would have said or. I have read an article about you can find it somewhere on the internet. I don't know if I made a record of it, but I have read something that is kind of from the other side. And if I remember correctly, and I'm not swearing to this, their opinion of who won is different. And maybe that's part of the source material or what have you. Like I said in another post, in the movie, I think it was kind of cute the way that they set up the whole question of who won, right? They brought it back to an idea of honor. I mean, it's a very Chinese thing, the way that they did this, right? Yeah. They brought it back to a question of honor. They brought it back to a question of integrity. They brought it back to a question of sacrificing for the good of other people, right? They showed a thing where Wong learned from Bruce Lee and Bruce Lee learned from Wong. Right. So I think that was kind of inventive, and it was kind of cool.
Yeah.
And it seems to me that Crowder isn't even aware that he is being influenced by Hollywood.
Right.
Which is interesting.
Yeah.
Because here's the thing. A lot of people are not aware of how much they have been influenced by Hollywood. Because Hollywood's agenda has always been surreptitious. Nobody in Hollywood has ever come up and said to the American public, you know, we're trying to influence you guys to a particular way of thinking, right?
Yeah.
No, they've never done that.
No.
It's never been overt.
Right.
But everybody, because he makes fun about Bruce Lee saying, I challenge anybody in this room as long as you're Chinese and 135 pounds or whatever. And maybe he doesn't even realize that that's reminiscent of a scene from Dragon.
Huh.
There's a scene from the movie, from Dragon, the Bruce Lee story, where Bruce Lee comes out at supposedly the Long Beach Internationals and says, I'll beat anybody in this room in 30 seconds. Never did that. But Crowder is behaving as if these cinematic renditions of Bruce Lee's personality and character are true.
Yeah.
And they're not.
Yeah.
The only thing that Dragon got right was the name Bruce Lee, the name Brandon Lee, right? The name Linda Lee, and the name Shannon Lee.
Yeah.
And then Dragon, because his Hong Kong nickname was Li Xiaolong, right? The little dragon. And that's about it.
Yeah.
Everything else, no. Because, infamously, let's say, on the set, in the movie, on the set of what was obviously Enter the Dragon, guess what they did? They didn't let the actor, Jason Scott Lee, use 2 Kali sticks. They gave him 2 Chinese broadswords. Did you ever hear about that one?
No, I didn't know.
That might be, maybe it's a rumor, right? I remember hearing that.
Yeah.
But what did Bruce Lee actually use in Enter the Dragon? Double stick from Kali. But politically, in Dragon, they couldn't show that.
Of course.
They had to show
Interesting.
Chinese broadswords. Check that out.
That's
See if there's anything to that.
Did not
right?
even, yeah.
Okay. So my I don't know if we talked about this yesterday, but my question for Steven Crowder would be, if Bruce Lee knew nothing about martial arts, to use your direct quote there, Steven, why would Mike Stone, Chuck Norris, and Joe Louis have good things to say about him and his fighting ability, and why would they actually have spent time training with him?
Yeah.
Right? Why would Joe Louis, many years later, put out a book on Bruce Lee's fighting system, credit Bruce Lee with helping him to develop his ability as one of America's top kickboxers? Ask yourself that. And then maybe, Steven Crowder, you can come back and do a rebuttal video of your own rebuttal video where you can admit, maybe I could have gone about this differently. Maybe I could have done this instead. I could have talked about how the fight with Wong Juk Man propelled Bruce Lee to investigate his own performance, analyze what went wrong, and then spearheaded his the creation of what we now know as Jeet Kune. Most people, if they win something, are satisfied with the win. They don't even use a win to propel themselves to higher heights. Maybe, Crowder, you could do that instead. Maybe you could talk about the impact of Bruce Lee's appearance on the Green Hornet and how that resulted in an upsurge in enrollment at martial arts schools. You could talk about how Bruce Lee dealt with the disappointment of not getting the role in the TV series Kung Fu. Did he shut down emotionally and retreat to his Los Angeles home? Or did he deal with that disappointment and, again, we all know the end result, became a Hong Kong superstar? Maybe you could point that out, because that is more beneficial to people around the world than calling Bruce Lee a compulsive liar, a total farce, weak as a kitten who knew nothing about martial arts. Who's the idiot here, Steven Crowder? Maybe you could have said this. You could have talked about the success of the big boss. You could have talked about what we just talked about, the traffic jam as a result of the opening of his second film, Fist of Fury, right? You could have talked about Bruce Lee being a pioneer, because do you know this? His third movie, Way of the Dragon, which was filmed in Rome, first Chinese production done internationally. Is that of significance for a guy who knew nothing about martial arts, was a compulsive liar, and was weak as a kitten? By the way, check the scene in Way of the Dragon where Bruce Lee does the lat spread, and then Steven Crowder and not Gay Jared ask Jared to do his best lat spread, put side-by-side video, right, and let your whole YouTube audience, your whole Louder with Crowder audience, put those two up and see who's the idiot. Maybe you could have said this. You could have talked, like we just talked about, the international success of Enter the Dragon. You could have talked about the legacy of Enter the Dragon. How much that film has grossed over the years. How that movie, 43 years, 44 years, 45 years after it was released, is still considered by many people around the world to be the epitome of martial art film. Forget Matrix, forget Bourne, forget whatever, I can't think of it, right? So many people still pay homage to Enter the Dragon, which starred Bruce Lee, a guy who, according to Steven Crowder and his cronies in the Louder with Crowder, because you could see them on the video, ha 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 ha, oh Steven, you're so clever, everything you're saying is so funny, right? All you jackasses, take a look at the impact, the worldwide impact of Enter the Dragon, and then ask yourself, oh, were we right that Bruce Lee was a total farce, who knew nothing about martial arts, was weak as a kitten? Oh, because you know why he can do 2-finger push-ups? Yeah. It's easy if you only weigh 110 pounds. That's what Crowder says. It's easy, right? You know, here's what they should do. They should check to see what was the measurement of Bruce Lee's forearms, and then check to see what's the measurement of Not Gay Jared's thigh. Okay? And check, see if it's not the same. Right? I mean, no, literally. And I don't think he was being funny when he said it's almost the same build.
Yeah. He probably thought he was.
I mean, when... Okay, let's see what else there is. Right? Yeah, and he could have made mention of the... I mean, it's almost like Bruce Lee was Nostradamus.
Yeah.
Bareback, Speedos, finger gloves, win by submission. Yeah. How could he possibly have known, right, that 20 years later, Royce Gracie was going to win UFC 1, and that was going to spark a revolution in martial arts? And then ultimately, because remember, Royce Gracie, later on, everybody changed to that outfit. Yeah. Where you kind of went from, you know, no gi. As a matter of fact, that whole, I don't know if before... if no-gi Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu was a thing, you know, until the UFC, I have no idea, right? But my point is, if Crowder is such a BJJ fan, such a Gracie Jiu-Jitsu fan, such an MMA fan, why not go the freaking genius of Bruce Lee? How did he know to dress like that for Enter the Dragon? Right? Now,
ahead of his time.
Yeah. Bruce Lee wasn't saying, oh, you know, in 20-something years, everybody's going to be dressing like this. And they're going to be doing a thing called the Ultimate Fighting Championship. And Dana White, because he's not Nostradamus. Right? Or whoever it is that makes those claims. Right? Anyhow. So, I'll just say this, right? When we talked about this.
Right.
He mentioned it twice about having a bout of Bruce Lee and getting his butt kicked and whatever. So, is he resentful of that? In some twisted way, is he blaming Bruce Lee for his being beat up as a kid, and now he has this compulsion to lash out?
Yeah.
All right, and so he takes Birth of a Dragon as the impetus, right? That becomes the source material, and now, oh yeah, I'm gonna. And it's so funny. Right at the beginning of this video, he says, "I know we're gonna get the most crap for this."
Yeah.
Maybe he just needs the attention for it. But a lot of people in the comments on his YouTube video have said, "Crowder, stick to politics. Forget martial arts."
Yeah.
You know, because you can't.
Go back over
it.
it.
Can't do it, right? And you know, yeah. So that's it.
Yeah.
That's it. I wish that I was more technically proficient, that we could
Splice it.
we could splice his thing in, and maybe all right. So maybe I'll try to do that, because I look, just like we were just talking about Bruce Lee and the 2000 book library. Linda Lee has been asked about that, and she said that he was mostly a self-educated man. Anything that you've seen up on any of my YouTube channels, that's me. I do all the editing myself.
Yeah.
I left school a long time ago. I didn't even go to college. Right? I went from Harrison College, because that's the word that we use for high school, right, to Eastern Airlines.
Yeah.
And then full-time martial art.
That's it.
So video editing, self-taught.
Self-taught.
Okay? Copywriting, self-taught. Right?
Yeah.
Everything else. Because what my inspiration? Bruce Lee, Dan Inosanto.
Yeah.
Two highly self-taught individuals.
Yeah. Guys, if you loved this video, make sure you like it, make sure you share it out. We're going to be closing it up for now, but make sure that if you're still listening, drop any final comments, any kind of questions.
Were there any more questions? Do we have any time?
Actually, on Instagram.
Okay.
What from No Nows? We don't have the real name. What year did Jeet Kune Do start? From transition to Lee Jun Fan, did Bruce let all generation students know?
What year did Jeet Kune Do start and then transition to what?
From Lee Jun Fan,
Lee Jun Fan.
did Bruce let all generation students know?
That's interesting. Okay, so in terms of when did Jeet Kune Do start? So my evidence is signs that were hung first at the Los Angeles Chinatown School, and then subsequently at Inosanto and Bustillo's Kali Academy. And there's one of them where, with Bruce Lee's signature, it says 1966.
Wow.
And then there's another one, and that says 67. And in Sifu Dan's book, it says that they were having the conversation in, I think he says, December of 68. So I think that's chronologically inaccurate, because of the fact that there's something that says 1966. So maybe he meant that the conversation occurred in December of 1966 as opposed to 1968. There's an article where Bruce Lee talks about, because this second part about from the transition from Lee Jun Fan, right? So maybe, like we were saying, that the Seattle era is modified Wing Chun, right? The Jun Fan era occurs in Oakland, and then the Jeet Kune Do era occurs in Los Angeles. So maybe the question is, did he inform the Oakland and Seattle people about this thing now called Jeet Kune Do? The answer to that, to the best of my understanding and my knowledge, is yes, because there's a thing where he says that Taki and James are senior, because he's talking about the three people that he's given permission to teach. And he says that Taki Kimura, a trusted friend and loyal student, in Seattle, James Lee, another trusted friend and loyal student, and then he says, and then Dan Inosanto teaches us his hobby here in Los Angeles. And then he makes the point that Dan has less training than James and Taki, and I think that was just because of the time at which this article was written,
Right.
or you were saying. But he says that, but Dan met me during the midst of my evolution. You see? And so he says that whenever they can, they try to update James Lee and Taki Kimura.
Right, right.
So I think that's what that question might be about. So my answer would be, yes, Bruce Lee did inform the two earlier generations.
Now from Brian Hakanowski. I always thought that Jun Fan gradually grew into Jekiti. Are they both different, or did they actually grow gradually?
I would say it grew gradually. Yeah, I would say that if you have to sit down and identify the eras and give them a name, you see, that's how we would do it. Seattle, modified Wing Chun, or non-classical Chinese Kung Fu. You look at Bruce Lee's book that was written, the one,
I know what you're
right?
talking
The
about.
Philosophical
Yep.
Art of Self-Defense. That was the Seattle era.
I've got that book.
They're dressed in the Kung Fu suits, right? Some of the technique is definitely classic
Yeah.
Chinese Kung Fu or even Wing Chun,
Yeah.
right? Then in Oakland, by that time, he has started moving away from Wing Chun. If you read some of the letters that were written during that time, right? So that could be identified as the era of Jun Fan.
Right.
And for me, in Jun Fan, there's the Jun Fan kickboxing, which is entry level, and then there's the Jun Fan Kung Fu. Because for me, I think it's easier to teach people kicking and punching before you try to teach them trapping and grappling. So that's how I break down terminology. So then there's Jun Fan kickboxing, Jun Fan Kung Fu, but then the expansion of that into greater ideas. Now he doesn't want the name Jeet Kune comes about because it expresses what in his opinion was the highest level of countering. It's taken from fencing. Stephen Crowder, this is a guy who knows nothing about martial arts, right? Bruce Lee, as you say. But he has the wherewithal to look at fencing and say, the stop hit is the highest level.
Right.
And then he and Dan Inosanto go, well, yeah, we should call what we do the stop hitting style. The name Jeet Kune is born.
Yeah.
And then hear what some of the detractors say. Almost immediately, Bruce Lee is like upset that he gave it a name because now people are going to say it's this and it's not that and whatever. But see, I don't think that there's a problem with that. As long as people understand that it's merely, here's what some people like to say, because it's what Bruce Lee said. It's merely a name, don't fuss over it.
Right.
With that, I strongly disagree. Fuss over it. Because if it's a thing that directs your life, if it's a thing that is of extreme importance to you, you're not going to fuss over it, right? If you have kids, right? If you have kids and your kids are important to you, you don't fuss over them?
Of course.
Come on.
Of course.
Please, right? So this, I think I understand what Bruce Lee was trying to say. Don't get caught up in the name.
Right.
But he wasn't saying, don't get caught up in your training. Don't get caught up in how martial art training can transform you.
Exactly.
That's not what he was saying. He was saying, don't get caught up in the name Jeet Kune itself. Call it whatever it is, I'm paraphrasing, right? Call it whatever it is that you want.
Right.
But I choose to call it Jeet Kune because it identifies my connection to my teacher and my teacher's teacher, something of which I am extremely proud, right? And anybody who has gone the path that I have gone should be extremely proud. Why would I not fuss over it?
Yeah.
It's a big deal.
Yeah.
Was there one more? We should take one more.
One last one.
Final question. Final
Okay.
question.
Did Bruce Lee research Kali and Silat?
Who said
No nows.
No nows.
In Instagram.
Instagram.
Okay, as far as research, I have seen a slip of paper which was a representation of a note where it was something about if someone saw a Silat practitioner, and I don't remember exactly what it said, but it was something like, if someone saw a Silat practitioner and thought that it was some kind of esoteric, whatever, they'd be gravely mistaken. And then there's something about investigate for fighting from the ground. And that is a handwritten note from Bruce Lee. In terms of researching Kali, again, to the best of my knowledge, the best of my understanding, Dan Inosanto shared his knowledge of Filipino martial arts with Bruce Lee. I don't know if Bruce Lee was aware of them before. I suspect that he might have been. From stories that I've heard, the two of them had a wonderful time visiting the old bookstores in downtown Los Angeles and what have you, and being amongst the first modern era, Stephen Crowder, modern era martial art cross trainers. Yes, we know pancration came way before in ancient Greece, okay? All right, nobody's saying that Bruce Lee was the first or anything.
That's awesome. Guys, thank you so much for joining. Thank you, Instagram. Thank you, Facebook. Make sure you like this, you share it. If you're on Instagram, double tap it or heart it or whatever it is. Guys, thank you so much. We'll see you on the next episode.